deep in the bowels of the Chip Theory Games marketing department, Jebediah Carlson, the lesser-known Carlson and head of global marketing, is trying to come up with a new name for Chip Theory's new game.
Listen, I said I only wanted 14 prawns on this sandwich, not one more, not one less. You're fired. Shannon, get me a new wife. So, we got this new game, and what are we gonna call it? Intern, what should we call the game? Mo Battle the Blues? No! Skyfire? No! Floaty Floaty Island Bash? No! You're fired. Now, Beat Poet Stefan, what should we call this game?
It's a game that's set in the sky where there are clouds, man. There are also towers which can be called spires. So I was thinking, Cloudspire. Cloudspire. This game, it will hurt your brain. Set in the sky, some factions can fly. The neoprene tiles are insane. Cloudspire.
Cloudspire? Cloudspire. That actually works. We're gonna call the game Cloudspire. However, Beat Poet, you're fired for being a dick. Shannon, get me a new Beat Poet.
Poor Barry the intern. Who knew that's how Chip Theory Games operated? Hi Not Board Gamers and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now today's video is a very exciting video. Today I'm going to be reviewing the solo game of Chip Theory Games' latest release, Cloudspire. Now, Chip Theory are obviously well known for releasing some really high quality games in the form of, say, Too Many Bones or Too Many Bones Undertow or Hoplomachus or Triplock, using this great technique of neoprene mats and poker chips as pieces for it. Obviously, Too Many Bones has been massively well received, and if you want to look into Too Many Bones, I can heartily recommend you look at Shut Up and Sit Down's video review of Too Many Bones. But today, we're going to be looking at Cloudspire, which is the latest release. Now, Cloudspire was launched on Kickstarter kind of back end of last year, and I late pledged in January, and as of about a week or so ago, my copy arrived, and I was very excited to go into this copy. I've already done a fairly in-depth kind of box and unboxing and content overview, so you can click on the link up there and that will take you to that. So we're not going to kind of cover the box and the artwork and everything's in there because of course that's in the unboxing video. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at the solo game of Cloudspire. Obviously this is a solo review channel. Now, Cloudspire is classed as a MOBA, that's a multiplayer online battle arena tower defense game, and these games generally are on computers or consoles, and they've been around for many years, and they're very popular with a lot of people. So Chip Theory kind of set themselves the task of taking that experience of a MOBA and a tower defense game and putting it into a board game. And Cloudspire is the culmination of all their efforts, and today's video is just to find out exactly whether they've done that successful and how the game plays. So as you can probably tell from my tone of voice and if you watch the unboxing video, I was genuinely very excited about this release. It really is one of this year's major anticipated releases for me. So when the game arrived about a week or so ago, I was tore into it, and over the last week I've taught myself how to play it, and I've played maybe a dozen games of it so far. Along with the base game of Cloudspire, I also got a couple of expansions. That was the Greege expansion and also the Portal Seekers expansion. Portal Seekers, not really for the solo game at this stage, although it does add some relic cards and there are some Earthscape tiles that you can use as well, but I'm sure it will be incorporated more. But the Greege is an additional faction. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip over the box and the contents, and we're going to go straight into the review, have a look at how the game plays, and let me give you my thoughts on the solo game of Cloudspire by Chip Theory Games, designed by Josh Carlson, Adam Carlson and Josh Wielgus. So in Cloudspire by Chip Theory Games, you're going to play one of 4 factions. That's if you've only got the base game. If you've got the Greege expansion, that's going to be a 5th expansion that you're going to play. And you're going to set up a solo scenario. And these are predefined scenarios within a solo scenario book that you get. And that tells you which tiles you're going to lay out upon this upon the table, or if you're very lucky and you manage to get the fantastic sky map like I did, which tiles you can lay out on there. And each of these scenarios, what you're going to do is you're going to take on another faction. So you will play one faction, they will play the other faction, or the AI will play the other faction, and you will get given a number of objectives in each scenario. And the aim over a number of waves, be that 4 waves or 5 waves, is to try and complete as many of these objectives as possible, and maybe even defeat the opposing AI's fortress. So why is this happening? What is the reason for Cloudspire? Well, apparently high above the earth is the realm of Ankar, and Ankar is a number of floating islands kept in place by this mysterious kind of substance or energy called the Source. And pretty much like what we've done with fossil fuels or anything that humans get their hands on, we used and abused this, and this has caused a bit of a problem up there, and now the islands are starting to crash together in something called the joining, and that gives the reason for these layouts. And of course each of these islands is owned by a different faction, and when these 2 landmasses or 3 landmasses or 4 landmasses, if you've got a 4-player game, are clashing together, then each faction is then battling for control of that particular landmass in Ankar. That is the reason why we're floating high above the sky. So to represent both you, your faction, and the opposing faction on this wonderfully tactile board, it's going to be done by using chips. Not those kind. Definitely not that kind. We're talking lots and lots of wonderful tactile poker-style chips. And by using chips, what you get is you actually get a physical representation of the kind of units and the spires and the various things that you're going to play on the board. You get a real kind of visual representation of what they're going to look like. So, for example, if I was to just build up this little battleborn here, as you can see, he's got a health of 3 and he's got an attack of 2, and the movement is not actually represented in chip form on here. So if I was to build him up, I'd get his 3 health chips, and as you can see, we have 3 chips just there, and I would also get an attack chip, and that would give him a stack that big. May not be too bad, you say, but let's take him up against this grizzled oak, and here we've got a health of 7, we've got an attack of 4, and he can move 2, so let's build this guy up. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we've also got 4 attack, and then we put his chip on top of there, and as you can see, the chances are that if my Battleborn went up against the Grizzled Oak, he wouldn't really stand a chance. And that's the great thing that Chip Theory have got about using chips, not only in Cloudspire, but also in Too Many Bones, and also in Hoplomachus as well, is it gives you this absolutely fantastic visual representation of the strength of the various units that are on the board. And you're going to continue to do that each and every wave, because each faction is given a barracks with a number of units and spires in there. And to recruit from your barracks, you will be given a number of CP points, that's command points, that you can spend on recruiting your units and your spires. And as you can see, some of them have in gold there, how many CP points it takes to recruit them, and it is a limited number each way. But as well as you doing that, your AI opponent is also going to unleash and stack up and place on the board opposing forces to thwart your efforts. Because as nice as it would be just to have Cloudspire as a manual dexterity game, just happily stacking coloured plastic chips all day, there is an actual point to the game. As we mentioned earlier, it's a MOBA, so it's a battle arena and it's a tower defense game. And the aim of the game, from both sides, depending on the objectives that are there, is to travel along the path that's on the map. And as you can see here, there's always on every map a definite path between one faction's fortress and another, is to travel along that map and either defeat their hero or maybe
topple their spires, or maybe even destroy their fortress gate. And whilst you are trying to do that, your AI opponent is working against you, and their objectives could be that they're going to get to your fortress gate and try and defeat yours first. So it becomes a battle of will, of wits, of might, of cunning, and of courage. Each wave, you will have the possibility of deploying 3 of your own faction units, and be that either a hero, be that a minion, or be that a spire, but you also may have had the opportunity to purchase a mercenary from the market phase as well. And what will happen through a series of kind of progressing, alternating turns is you'll have deployed yours, they will have deployed their units, and you'll progress along this kind of map towards their objective, and sooner or later you're going to meet and there's going to be a fight. And each wave will last until there are no more minions left on the board, or an endgame condition has been met, like you've met all the objectives, or you've triggered a specific objective, or one of the fortresses is now at 0 health. So combat in the game is handled in a relatively efficient way. As the units are moving around the board, eventually they will meet, and what will happen when they meet is they will attack, or one of them will attack the other. So whoever's moved into the area where he's going to attack is adjacent to another faction unit will start the attack. And what they will do is, as I mentioned earlier, each faction unit has a number of attack there, and it's relatively straightforward. What they're going to do is they are going to knock that number of attack off there. So this dispatch unit has 2. They will knock 2 health directly off whoever they're going up against. So in this case, it's the Warbriar. As you can see, the Warbriar has 3 health. So if the dispatch unit was to attack the Warbriar, it would instantly knock 2 health off the 3 health, leaving him with 1. However, in a kind of a clever mechanic, what happens is more or less every unit has an instant retaliation on there. So this Warbriar would then damage the dispatch that's just attacked it for 1. And so the game progresses, moving around the board, each of these faction units kind of meeting each other and kicking the living snot out of each other. And that would be okay if the game was called Kicking the Living Snot Out of Each Other. Of course it's not, it's called Cloudspire. So therefore, there has to be an element of spire play in there, and that's a particularly good element. So moving your units around the board is your tactical element in the game. You're going to progressively move those towards your objectives. And as you move your units, what's going to happen is they're going to get into combat, and eventually they will deplete and you will have 0 units left. However, there's a very deep strategic element in the game, and that comes in the form of your spires or your towers. So what you're going to do is, when you want to bring a tower out onto the board, you have to place it on one of the source wells that's available, and you have to have influence on that. So that has to be adjacent to a hex or a tile where you've already got a tower, or adjacent to your fortress. And what you're going to do with this tower is you're going to add an attack, or some attack chips, and maybe some range chips, and also maybe some fortification chips. So your tower comes with a default range of 1, so it can fire to the very next hex, but the more range chips you have, the further it can fire. And what happens is you'll place that on the board on a source well, and that will activate each and every turn. You see, because every time one of your units has finished its move, it doesn't move straight into the attack phase. What happens next is that the spires will fire, and that means that any spire that your unit is within range of will fire upon that particular unit, causing the amount of damage that's either on the chip or increased damage as per whatever upgrade chips are on there. So you will move, readying yourself for an attack, but you may have to take into consideration that you're going to be fired on by a spire. Now, you can also attack the spires, and what you will do, unlike on a unit where you will remove the number of health chips from there depending on how much attack you got, on a spire you will only ever remove 1 chip maximum per attack. And also, if that spire has a fortification chip on there, that means that you need a minimum of 2 to remove that fortification chip. So it may well be that on one particular turn that you fall into range within a spire and you manage to attack it, and it's fired on you and it's taken some health, but you manage to attack that spire and you remove one of its chips. Then your next move, you're still moved around the board and you're still in the range of that spire, and it's going to take a second pop at you. And that's the beauty of these spires, is the strategic elements. Placing the spires, the right spires with the right kind of upgrades on there and the right kind of talents, means that it can make for a very meaty defense against any of the AI coming against you. But
He will also have his own spires as well, and of course that makes it very difficult for you to get past those spires. Now, I also mentioned upgrade there just a second or so ago, and upgrading in this game is just an amazing beast. Pretty much everything on the board, be that your units, be that the spire, be that the fortress themselves, can be upgraded. This game is like the Robocop of board games. Everything is up for upgrading in this game. So let's take, for example, one of your heroes. And here we have Cram the Mighty, and he's one of the Brawnen there. And on his non-upgraded side, he comes with an early talent there, which is armoured, which means he doesn't take that first point of damage that goes against him, which is really, really good. But you can also see there's a couple of little blue dots on there, and what that means is he can have 2 upgrades onto his starting chips. So that could be the fact that, you may give him some fortification, which gives him additional health, or you may give him an increased attack, which will increase his attack rate. Once you've reached those 2 upgrades, what you can do, you don't have to do it, is you can flip it over to the side with the star on, and then he gets some extra health and some extra attack on there. And as well as his starting talent of armoured, he's also got survival on there as a talent. And what survival does is if he does not move or attack in a particular phase, then he gains 1 health back. So not only can Cram the Mighty be upgraded, but also the spires can be upgraded as well. And again, the spires have some blue dots which allow for the number of upgrades that go on there. So maybe you add more range chips on there so they can shoot further, more attack chips so they can inflict more damage, or more fortification so they are stronger. Your individual units, your kind of minions, what they can do is you can upgrade them using the fortress, and I'll come on to how the fortress upgrades in a second, because everything in this game is about being upgraded. Even the board itself can be upgraded. You can get these earthscape tiles that you can purchase in the market phase, and what that allows you to do is that allows you to change the layout of the board itself. It's an organic experience, an upgraded organic experience. But these fortresses, they have some very clever upgrades. So fortress upgrading is a really key part of this. Progressively throughout the game, you're going to upgrade your chips and you're going to upgrade your spires, but if you don't upgrade your fortress, as each wave, both you and the AI gets progressively stronger and sends stronger units out there, there's a real danger that they're going to attack your fortress and reduce it to 0. So how do you upgrade the fortress? Well, each faction gets its own reference sheet, and it's in this lovely kind of vinyl that Chip Theory do use, this indestructible waterproof vinyl. And as you can see here, this is a Brawnen fortress, and I have their reference sheet here, and it tells you how much costs, so how many source points it costs to upgrade each part of the Brawnen fortress. So say I wanted to make sure that all my battleborns, my little minions, were upgraded and promoted to their upgrades to their promoted side. That meant every time that I sent them out onto the board, they went out on the star side. What I'd have to do is I'd have to spend 4 source points, as you can see here, and that will allow me to put a peg in the honour pit, and that means that the Brawnen are upgraded or promoted on every go. Then if I've got enough source points, I could also put another one there, and that would allow me to then send my dispatch targets out there, my dispatch minions out there on their upgraded side or promoted side. But it also gives you access, certainly on the Brawnen, to things like the Forsaken Artillery, and this is where you will roll a die, and that will tell you how far you can fire out from here, and then you will also roll another die, and that will tell you how much damage you're going to do. So you can also do that in the Stronghold, which is there. And maybe I want to upgrade my spires, so therefore I'll be able to upgrade the smelter, and I'll be able to send better spires out there. So the continual upgrading of your fortress absolutely allows you to excel at this game and build a stronger army every single wave. And that's how each wave will continue. You will upgrade your fortresses, you'll build spires, you'll promote your minions, you'll send them out onto the board with your heroes, as will the AI, and you will meet and you will do battle, and then all the minions will be defeated, and that will be the wave over, and then you will do it again. And you'll continue doing that either until the waves are finished, the preset number of waves are finished, you've kind of reached your objectives, or the fortresses have been destroyed. So you've either got to, in most scenarios, you've got to the opposing AI's fortress and you defeated that, or a game-ending condition for you is if your fortress is defeated. And that's how the game progressively plays. There is a lot of thinking to do with this game. There's a lot of moving parts, and we've not even spoken about some things like how you actually get these earth tiles in the market phase, or how you can get additional mercenaries to help you, or the AI can get them, or what these landmark chips do, or the dice play as well. Now, for a Chip Theory Games, coming off the back of Too Many Bones, there is surprisingly little dice play. In reality, the most dice play that you'll do is you're going to roll these spire dice to see how much damage that the spires do. And that will continue throughout the game. There is, as I said, a lot of moving parts, a lot to handle in this game. And as you can imagine, that means that there are a fair amount of rules. Let's talk about the rules. Because with a game with this amount of magnitude and this amount of gameplay and so many moving parts, it means that there's a lot of rule play. And what you get is a fairly decent rulebook to start off with. And this thing is some kind of 34, 35 pages long. And it's very well laid out. It's nicely structured. It gives you some really good illustrations on what happens and how it happens. But that's just the core mechanics of the gameplay. Now, my suggestion to anybody picking the game up is you read this first. Before you even think about playing the game, you're going to read this rulebook. Then what you can do is read it again, because you're going to need to refer to this quite a bit as you play the game. This only gives the core mechanics, because each and every faction that's in the game will have its own reference sheet, and these reference sheets will dictate how you upgrade the fortress, or what upgrades the fortress can have, and also on the back, faction specific talents, and also how factions specifically work. And there's one for each and every faction. Not only that, if you are playing with, say, some of the Portal Seekers chips in the solo game, which I've done, they also have specific faction-specific talents which you need to refer to. And then we have another one, which is kind of the game overview, if you like, and this tells you what the landmark talents or what the merc talents are. So what you will find, certainly for your first few games, is there's going to be a lot of rules referencing, and you would have to be some kind of magic memory person to remember all of these faction-specific rules and talents. However, on the back of the rulebook, there is a quick reference guide which does tail you through kind of what the waves are and the basics of it. And after about 3 or 4 games, you find yourself referring to this even less and less. However, I think you will constantly be referring to the myriad talents that are available on the faction sheet. My first maybe 3 or 4 games I had resetting because I was getting key rule elements wrong, and that's okay, it's a big game and I really didn't mind doing that. But it does kind of mean that it's not an initial pick up and play game. You're not going to lay it out on the table or on your sky mat and play it straight away. What you're going to do is you're going to play it, and you're going to play 50%, 60% of the rules wrong, and then you're going to play it again, you play 30 or 40, and then you'll play it again and get down to 20, and I'm kind of a dozen games in now. I think I have most of the rules down pat, but I still refer back to that rule book. It's not ambiguous, it's just how you interpret some of the rules themselves. Now, for the solo game, you do get the kind of solo scenario book, and that's the same for the cooperative scenarios as well. And there are some solo specific rules. However, they're not a million miles away from the core rules of the game itself. So if you can play the game, if you can move your pieces around the board, chances are that you're going to be able to move the AI's pieces around the board. And that's a really, really good thing, is the fact that the AI does all the heavy lifting for you. It doesn't leave you wanting. It tells you, as long as you follow a kind of logical format, it tells you exactly what you should do and how you should do it. So if you're making mistakes on the AI side, chances are you're making them on your own side as well. And that's a really, really good thing, is the fact that the solo game, once you've got those rules down, is very, very, very easy to get into. And not only do you get these kind of numerous solo scenarios that are in the rule book as well, there's a cooperative scenario book as well, which actually adds even more scenarios. And as a solo player, you can play co-op, of course you can, so you can play through all of those scenarios. So, the rules. I think they're very well laid out, but they are many and varied. And as long as you take the time and invest the time to read this book and concentrate on the core mechanics, you will pick everything up as you play the game, and do not be afraid of making a few mistakes. That's what the game is for. You learn not only by doing things, but only by making mistakes. And as I said, the solo then becomes an absolute breeze. You are literally moving their pieces and encountering as you would encounter your own pieces. And I think Chip Theory Games are absolute experts in making a ground up level solo game that absolutely fits into a multiplayer game. And that, my friends, is Cloudspire. There is a lot of game here. Each scenario, certainly on the solo side, can be played a number of times. You can go back and replay it because it will play differently every single time. And each scenario kind of makes you want to progress to the next scenario. In the solo book, there's a campaign mode as well, where you're racking up renown points, and there's no one way to win a scenario. Certainly the people I've been speaking to online who are playing it solo, they're all achieving a success in a scenario in a completely different way to how I achieve a success. And I think that's a real beauty there, is there are many paths to victory in this game, but there are so many paths to defeat as well. It's a game that demands your time and your attention. You're going to spend a lot of time learning this game. It's a beautiful thing to lay out, but I wouldn't expect to lay it out and play it straight away. You're going to have to read through those rule books, and you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. Use them as stepping stones so you don't make the same mistakes twice in subsequent games. But once you've invested that time, what you got here is quite a unique experience. You know, back at the beginning, I said that this was Chip Theory Games' effort to try and recreate a MOBA and tower defense computer game on a board game. Could it be successful? And I think, without a shadow of a doubt, this game has absolutely exceeded any expectations I had of it. I think it's a beauty to behold. I think the tactile experience of moving your chips around on this wonderfully printed neoprene board, which changes with each scenario, is just a pleasure that I haven't had in any other board game. There's just something that makes you want to come back to this game more and more. Every time you play, you learn something new. You can develop a new strategy. It will hone your strategies for subsequent plays. The almost infinite amount of replayability in this solo scenario means that as a solo game, it's ranking right up there. And one of the really good things is, at the back of the solo scenario, you also get an endless mode. An endless mode. I mean, this is what the computer games do. This is what the console games do, is they give you a mode where it's wave after wave after wave after wave, and you're constantly battling, and that in itself will make for a massively unique experience. Look, it's not without, it's kind of not flaws, but it's not without its challenges. The rules do take some getting around. The amount of table space it takes, you're not going to put this out on a small table, so you need to make sure that you have a good amount of table space. I don't have the Spire minis for it, so one thing I regret not buying. And at some point I will get them, and that will add just some kind of visual flavour to the board. Otherwise, you're looking, kind of down on this flat surface at these chips. And that may not be for everybody, but for me, it's more than just pushing things along a path. It's me kind of playing chess almost. I'm thinking about my next move tactically with my minions and my heroes. I'm thinking about the long-term strategy of the game using the spires. I've always got this solo-specific objectives in mind as well. How am I going to achieve those and survive the wave at the same time? You are constantly juggling sacrifice, progression, upgrade, battling in this kind of constant stream of trying to get to these objectives. And there are many games, and certainly in the bugger of the first scenario, where I was nowhere near complete, and I made an early move that just devoured my entire game, and that can happen. Each and every move matters in Cloudspire. I think it's absolute work of art. I really do. I think that whatever my expectations were for this prior to receiving the package have been left way behind, because what I've got here is something that is going to hog my table time for a long time to come. And there we go. That was intense, wasn't it? That was Cloudspire by Chip Theory Games, and if you got this far into the review, then you will know that I really, really like this game. It's exceeded each and every expectation that I've had for it. It really is a game that demands your time and demands your attention. If you're willing to invest the time into learning the game, you're going to get so much playability out of it. As a solo game, it's almost unrivaled in its scope and in its stature, and in what it's trying to achieve as a MOBA and as a tower defense game.
it absolutely excels in every area. The wonderful tactile feel, the amount of strategy and tactical decisions that you have to make, the constant changing board and changing scenarios as a solo player, the campaign mode as a solo player, the fact that you can absolutely play the co-ops as a solo player as well. That wonderful endless mode means that there is a lot of game in this box. I think it is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the finest games to be released this year. And I would say that if you had the opportunity to now do a pre-order for it from the Chip Theory Games site, and you like what I've said in the review, then absolutely go and press the buy button. Yes, it's a little bit expensive, but there's a lot of content there. There's a lot of great quality, top-notch quality content there. You do get your absolute money's worth out of this game. So thank you once again for joining Not Board Gaming. I'm Mark, I'm your host. If you do like what you've seen so far, then please remember to subscribe to the channel. You can also join us on Facebook. That's Not Board Gaming. That's always BORED. And yeah, it's a beautiful October day here in Sheffield. I'm walking the dog. I'm taking a break from Cloudspire. The working week has finished, and the weekend is going to be spent playing even more Cloudspire. So once again, remember that you can always like and subscribe to the channel by following the link here, and also you can check out some of our other video reviews as well. Once again, thank you very much for taking the time to join me on this journey through Cloudspire. And remember, until next time, if you can't find anybody else to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourself.